3. I want to change that voice so it's like I don't know. Maybe it's different. But today,
can I do it? Can I do it?
Okay, yes. Do the voice for us. You get to do this week's voice. What would it be?
This meeting is being recorded.
All right.
Wow.
That's just today's. It'll be different every time.
Karen, that's impressive.
Janet's
For
wine
me,
glass.
the public
just broke.
who's just joining, that's our commission. Welcome to Reality of Politics in San Juan County.
Nice going, Tony.
Elected official right there. Okay, so we're going to call the meeting to order, and we are, let's see, it's the May 25th, Tuesday special meeting. I want to thank the commissioners who are here. We'll see who else straggles in over the next few minutes. Remembers we have a meeting today. But let's begin, Catherine, with a call to order, with a roll call. That's what I'm trying to say.
Catherine is not here today.
Oh dear.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do it, and I'm just going to go through who I see here. So Maureen is present.
Here.
I see Patty.
Here.
I feel like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, and I see Kyle, and I see Paul Dossett. I
Here.
see Tony.
Present.
David Dellendorf. We're just going to count you, dude. Sharon.
Every time I have my mic on, I'm not called on first. Here.
Okay, and Anne-Marie Shanks and Janet Burnell.
Here.
We have Bob O'Connell, Dave Anderson,
Here.
Olivia Roseberry,
Here.
and Jane Fuller.
Yes. Present.
All of the commissioners who are present at this point. So with that, we will go into the minutes from April. We're going to do both May 19 and 20 minutes. So let's begin with May 19.
Didn't quite finish.
Janet, please.
I had 2, and I sent these to Catherine and Olivia. I think I sent it to Olivia. I wasn't sure. A couple changes on the May 19th minutes. One was she had some question about when the Visitors Bureau contract expired. It was September or December ? And so it's actually December of 2022. And then there was a line, the San Juan County Council will employ existing professional staff in the county department, which could be read to mean the San Juan, this was in terms of the recommendations about the Visitors Bureau. It could be read to mean the San Juan County Council will employ existing professional staff already in the county department. So she has amended it to say the San Juan County Council should consider employing staff experienced in tourism when creating this new department. And those are my only 2 changes.
Bueno. Tony, was that a hand or were you just like fidgeting? Okay.
No,
Okay.
thank you. I wasn't.
Okay. Bob,
Are we doing the 20th now also?
let's finish with the 19th and adopt
Okay.
it, and then we'll move to the 20th. So any more questions or additions on the 19th? If not, I would accept a motion to adopt the May 19th minutes.
And
Patty and second by David. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. The minutes are adopted. Now we will move to the May 20th meeting minutes. Bob, did you have a comment?
Yes, about I'd say about 83% of the way down the page, the first page. Friendly amendment by Bob to add this language, quote, hiring and conditions of employment are generally used. Well, that's not what went in. I said, hiring and conditions of employment are generally used, but what needed to be added and what was added was hiring and conditions of employment, end quote. And the are generally being used. That didn't go in there.
that wasn't there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Jane?
Yeah, I just looked at these now and I had noted at least 2 minor things. So I'll just mention those quickly. And goodness knows what, these aren't page numbered. So I'm just gonna, on the first page under item 3, committee report, Justice and Equity Committee, it's like the 4th line down prior to the first motion being made. it said Jane will ask the PA's office about adding language that employees or prospective employees cannot be discriminated for being pregnant. I was going to suggest we strike that because the conversation went on and it was determined that we would just include it. So I didn't know if that's necessary to retain there.
We could strike it.
Okay, the other one that I was going to clarify, because there was a question mark there, gee whiz. It was related to, again, a motion by Anne Marie, seconded by Janet, with regard to the addition of commissions, boards, and committees in under section 8.20 exemptions. And I was just going to suggest that we leave that to read motion by Anne Marie, seconded by Janet, with addition of commissions, boards, and committees, and then period, full stop, because we don't need to say as directed by blank
Yep.
question mark.
Yep.
And that, yeah, my very quick review, that's all I could really pick up.
Okay, could you send those edits to Catherine too?
Yes.
Okay, so any other comments, additions, changes? Okay, with those amendments, I would accept a motion to adopt the minutes.
Motion to adopt.
Maureen with a second by Jane.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bueno, minutes are adopted. Okay, we have a follow-up discussion on ranked choice voting. Who's going to lead that?
Are you skipping?
What did I skip?
There was something else on the agenda, I think. Mike Thomas?
No,
No, so
make choices next.
I have,
There's two different versions of the agenda I've seen.
yeah, so we had a little mess up. So Olivia and I confirmed agendas and then the wrong set went out. So that should have been confirmed. So Olivia, will you help me? Am I working off the correct agenda?
You are.
Okay, that's what I thought. So Mike Thomas will be the very beginning of the meeting tomorrow.
Correct.
And actually, I need to remind myself of this, and I want to remind all commissioners. It is not a discussion of Mike Thomas. It is a discussion of the position of county manager and whether or not that position should be appointed versus elected. Mike Thomas will be presenting as he is the current person in that role. But this is not an evaluation or a discussion of him or his performance at that position. It is solely based on whether or not that position should be elected versus appointed. That will happen tomorrow at 4:10 p.m. is what I'm going to guess at. Maureen.
just quickly on this change, I didn't see any other agendas but this one that I have, which shows the follow-up with the electing county manager and the minimum qualifications. So are both of those moved to tomorrow?
Yeah, so here's the agenda. Let me just go over it in case anybody.
Well, yeah, and if I may just ask Kevin, may it be sent again, just so I can,
Yes, of
would
course.
you mind?
Yes,
Thank
Olivia was already on it. She's reading your mind. So here's the agenda for today. After the roll call and approval of the minutes is number 4 item is follow up on the May 6th discussion of ranked choice voting. And those of you that were proponents of that, I had asked that you be prepared. So hopefully you are to present on that. And then Maureen, if you were able to know who was discussing ranked choice in the very beginning. No, that came from the public. So that did not go through a subcommittee. That's correct. That's
Right.
why.
Well,
So hang on. The next item is the process
Okay.
committee, proposed declaration on community values.
Yes. Did you get my email, Kevin?
Yes, although I did not read it.
Oh, okay. Well, that was the second part of getting the email is actually reading it. You know, it's like a Seinfeld thing. I know you can reserve the car, but you have to keep the reservation. Anyway, yeah.
I'm sorry, I've been inundated with charter review stuff. I've actually done
Sure.
nothing but charter for the last 5 days. And my clients are getting very frustrated. But
Well-
I'm sorry, what did I miss in the email?
it was that in essence, the committee, the subcommittee on the value statement came back with a statement, you know, and everyone else should know, because we sent it out to the entire commission, even though it had not been approved by the process committee, because Kevin suggested that be done, and it's a good thing that it was, because everyone got at least a look at it. To cut through it all, when it came to the meeting this morning, the committee did not agree that what they came up with, what the subcommittee came up with, was what we wanted to go with. And we have asked Megan to take a look at it, and she's going to. And we have called a special meeting to consider what she comes up with.
Why don't we, sorry, why don't we,
tomorrow- Go ahead.
okay, finish your thoughts.
I was just going to say, we've called a special meeting tomorrow night. It's at 7:30 in anticipation of tweaking and adopting what Megan has come up with, and presenting it to the commission at its Thursday meeting, if that is possible. And I hope it is.
Yes, it is. And I'm sorry. And Olivia's reminded me of that too. So I did skim your email. And so there's a potential for this being a very short meeting today, which, wow, that would be awesome. And so I understand what you're saying about process not being ready. What I wanted to do is maybe raise that. So let's just circle back on that for just a moment after ranked choice and see if there's any further update. And then maybe we can find time to move them to Thursday. So let's go back to ranked choice voting. This is the opportunity to begin discussing this further.
I thought you were going through the agenda. You haven't completed the agenda yet.
Thank you so much, Paul. Okay, so for those who don't have the agenda in front of you, it goes ranked choice voting, then process committee, which we will likely postpone to Thursday, then minimum qualifications for elected officials,
Okay.
and then new business, and then public comment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Sorry about that. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go back to ranked choice voting now. And so who would like to lead a discussion on that? We had a couple of presenters, one from Fairfield, Washington, and the other, the past auditor and chair of the Charter Review Commission, from Pierce County, who brought in different perspectives. We've had a number of different inputs from the public on this, which is how it originally got onto the agenda, which was during our first set of town halls. This was one of the topics that received the most input. And since that point in time, there's been quite a lively kind of sidebar discussion within the commission. So who would like to take a lead on this for now? Sharon, please.
Well, thank you very much. As I've mentioned in the past, I first got interested in ranked choice voting when I first learned about it back in 2004. And I was very interested in it because it is a more democratic system of voting. It actually, what I'm seeing happen over the years is people voting based on who they're told is more electable, voting basically out of fear of throwing away their vote, or being called a spoiler because they voted for what they think is a candidate. And as we saw, way back in 2004 with John Kerry, he was like supposed to be the electable guy, and guess what happened? He did not win. So what I would like to see is this ranked choice voting, which back then we were calling it instant runoff voting. Now it's being called more ranked choice voting. But it allows you to have peace of mind when you vote. It allows you to say, this is my first choice, but if my first choice doesn't get enough votes, then I want my second choice to come in as my new first choice. You don't have to vote for more than one candidate, but you can. And it just seems to me that this will eliminate a lot of the fear in voting and make the system more democratic, make it possible for candidates that maybe don't seem like they're like the most electable candidates might actually be able to win. We would actually get to see what kind of support they actually have, because people are not afraid of throwing away their vote because they only get to vote for one candidate. So that was my springboard 17 years ago. And just seeing that, this came up for Washington State this year. It didn't get through the process this year, but we are in a unique position in San Juan County. We're one of the 3 home rule charter counties that actually has the opportunity, because we're nonpartisan elections, that we could actually implement ranked choice voting in San Juan County and kind of get the process going here and get people more familiar with it and sort of push the state along by being a leader here in San Juan County. So that's what I would like to see. I'm just going to say one more thing before anybody else, I want to hear what everybody else has to say. But just to say that I was kind of frustrated in our meeting where after Sharon Hennick presented, there was no opportunity for Lisa Aro from Fair Vote Washington to speak to those things, but she did send us an email, and I'm wondering if everyone had a chance to read that email, because I thought she made some really good points just in terms of the fact that we are so far beyond what happened in Pierce County now. I mean, just across the country, there's so many cities and towns and even whole states that are now using ranked choice voting, and it's working well. So, all the concerns that we had are really being addressed, and they've been addressed over the years since then by many, many different communities. So I understand that there's some fear around any kind of change that looks like it could be messy. The main thing I want to say is democracy is messy. But I think our concerns are probably based in things that are no longer relevant. Thank you.
Bob, please.
A couple of things. More candidates will be encouraged to run if they don't fear becoming the spoiler in the race, the Ralph Nader in the race.
Right.
Candidates will run more positive issue-based campaigns because they want people who don't prefer them to put them number 2 or number 3. So they won't go after individual candidates. They'll bear in on issues. And this is, only good for elections. By the way, the present mayoral race in New York City is ranked choice. And I think Andrew Yang is ahead. I'm not sure. Anyway, if you look, a good example of where ranked choice could have saved, I personally think could have saved lives, would be in Florida in 2000. Bush v. Gore, you may remember. And Gore lost by a smidgen in Florida, and Ralph Nader got way more votes than Gore would have needed. If we had had ranked choice voting and Gore, Nader had been dropped off, those votes most probably, almost assuredly, would have gone to Gore. He would have been president of the United States, and thousands upon thousands of people who died in that Iraq war would not have died. He would have gone to war in Afghanistan, surely, to chase down the Taliban, but not to Iraq to get rid of what's his name, and that's a darn shame. I mean, many of us, I think, would agree that Al Gore would have made a better president than George W. Bush, but not all of us.
Hang on. Let's not go there.
Okay,
Just,
I'm not going there. Forget I said any of that.
I disagree with you. Just not necessarily appropriate for our dialogue right now.
There you go.
Right. I want to just say something about that, is that this is not a partisan issue. I would say probably the main leadership in both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party probably don't want ranked choice because they really like being in control of who gets to the top of the ticket.
Also, I want to caution both of you. We're not going to impugn political parties. We're not going to impugn each other. So let's just try and stay just on the topic.
Okay,
So
so just
I'm going to call on
just-
Emery. I'm going to call on Emery, and we'll come
go
back
ahead.
after others have spoken.
Yes,
Thank you.
I have a process question, which is, it says that this is a discussion of ranked choice voting, and I'm not sure how would this work in terms of the commission moving it forward and it being an amendment. I don't know if anyone can address that, but I would appreciate that.
So what I would like to see us get to today is action on this. So if a majority of this commission were to vote on it, then it would be proposed as another amendment to the charter Sharon was absolutely correct that San Juan County is one of a few counties where we could actually do this within our charter. So if we did this within our charter, just like any other proposition, it would go to the ballot, and then it would be decided on in November by the people on whether or not they wanted to do this. But the way it would go forward is just the way we would move forward any other amendment. We would then in the next 5 days have to spend, somebody else, not me, I'm not diving in on any more of them, is going to have to do a lot of research and findings and write it up if that were to go that way. But that should not deter us. If there's a majority on this commission who's interested in this being on the ballot, the work over the next few days should not deter you from moving in that direction. I see Maureen and then David Dillendorf and then Janet and then Dave. Okay, hang on one sec. I said Maureen, David, Dave, and Janet. Okay, Maureen, please.
My question is there any other way ranked choice voting can be introduced to the voters? Does it have to be through the charter? Could it be through initiative or referendum? Is there another way of introducing it?
I don't know. Randy is on, but Mylene may actually know better as well. So, but before either of you come on, let's get through the other comments and then we'll circle back. And I don't know if Randy has, but Mylene, I know you've expressed your concerns with it. So I would just ask that when we do ask you to speak, that it purely be about the question. We're not from you, but we're getting barraged from other electeds on different topics right now. So I just want to make sure that everybody, the commission is very clearly, and this is not directed at you at all, Mylene, but I want to make sure the commission knows when we're hearing from one of our professionals and the electeds who have this expertise, when we're hearing from them their personal opinion versus their professional opinion. And I think that's really important. And so I just want to clarify that. So Maureen, did you have another question or was
that's my question?
Okay, so let's circle back on that in just one sec. Is that okay, Maureen?
Yep.
Okay, David Dellendorf.
Would somebody please clarify for me, if we were to amend or propose an amendment on the ballot, whether it would affect only county-wide elections, or would it affect our voting and the tabulation for statewide elections or legislative district elections? I'm not sure. My impression is it would only affect, we can only affect through our charter how the votes are counted for our local county elections or the town of Friday Harbor or the hospital district or whatever, but we can't change anything the way the votes would be counted for out of county elections. So does somebody, maybe Mylene could answer that?
Yep.
Maybe somebody else. Sharon, do you know?
I wrote that one down. Thank you, David. So I wrote that one down too, and we'll circle back on that as well. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the great fortune to actually work with Fair Vote in 2002 when the blanket primary had just been thrown out by the Supreme Court, and in Olympia they were scurrying to find a new election system. And I had it was an amazing group of people. It was people from the Democrats, Republicans, the Socialist Democrats, Greens, Libertarians, Christian Exodus. It was a whole group of political parties that were trying to find a new solution for Washington State's elections. And it was ranked choice voting. It was IRV at the time, instant runoff voting. And when I broke with that group, I decided to go work for the Grange, who did the top two, who created a nonpartisan a primary system where candidates only have to identify their political philosophy. The power of political parties to determine their standard holders, standard bearers, was not applied to candidates anymore. And that's a big change in our state. And I think there's a lot of concern statewide in terms of statewide elections that the current movement to get ranked choice voting reestablished here or established here is to give the parties back their right to have their brand on ballots. So the political parties can control who they're putting forward and take away from people the right to self-declare what their political philosophy is. That doesn't relate to us, who we are, because we're independent here as in San Juan County, of course. But it will be something that statewide, certainly Fair Vote will use to point to that it is working here if we do adopt it. And I think it is an interesting program, an interesting structure for elections. I think it would be, what would be a good suggestion for us to do is make a recommendation that we allow that if an auditor wants to do it in the future, they can choose to do that. And I think that would be incumbent on the auditor to feel it's a secure system and that it would work for our county here. When I was investigating electronic signature gathering and electronic elections, the people who talked about it says one thing you really need, you have to do something like this, is an auditor that's friendly to it, that wants to do it and is willing to take it on. And I think ranked choice voting is one of those things. So I recommend a recommendation to council to allow this to happen. Thank you.
Just one clarification, Dave. A recommendation to the auditor or recommendation to council? The auditor runs the elections program in her role as an independently elected official. So you said both in the very end.
Forgive me. Yeah, a recommendation to council to allow the auditor to do it if they so choose. So it is part of our system, our laws. It's a recommendation to council to allow this. And then in the future, in say 5 years, not during a charter review, in 5 years, if the auditor wants to choose to do this, they have the right to do it.
Okay, so then I have a question, which is this, okay, I'll circle back to myself in a second here. I have Janet and then Tony and then me.
So my question was kind of aligned with Maureen's. I just need an argument for why the charter amendment is the best way of addressing ranked choice vote, which I find quite compelling and interesting. It seems to me there's a fairly engaged group of people who are in support of ranked choice voting who could bring this forward as an initiative at some point. So I just need to hear the argument why a charter amendment, especially since we're looking at like 20 charter amendments at this point, is the best way of addressing this. I also want to point out that Sharon put a really interesting note in the chat that there is an option of putting it in the charter, but not to implement it until it's approved on a state level. And if that happens in 2 or 4 years, we wouldn't have to wait 10 years to put it in the next charter. So I just need an argument why the charter is the only way to do this.
Okay, Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to go into the details of what others have mentioned about how it happened in presidential elections or in other state elections and so on. Recalling the presentation by the group Fair Vote Washington, I recall there were two maps on the screen. One map was of the United States, which was full of yellow. And I looked into that in detail. Very little of that yellow was actually counties or statewide. The majority by far were municipalities, cities, and so on. But the presenter was making it seem as if there's a lot of yellow. That means a lot of groups are actually doing ranked choice voting, which I thought this is really kind of, it seems that there's an agenda and there has to be something that I'm missing. The other map that this person showed was the world, Europe mostly, but other parts of the world where it was all in purple. And basically saying that the rest of the world, all of that part of purple is doing it. Then I looked into that as well. And I discovered that a lot of those countries are actually parliamentary countries. They're not they're different, completely different from our form of government. Parliamentary systems are such that the members of the parliament are elected, and they could have 20 of them running for a seat. That could actually probably work. And then the parliament assembles and they appoint a leader, in many cases called the prime minister. So I think it really is not relevant to what we're trying to do in San Juan County. If the issue is to make a statement for the nation to follow San Juan County, that's one discussion. If it's going to be practical in San Juan County to actually function as a system of elections where we rarely ever get more than 2 candidates, it seems that we're spending a lot of effort trying to do something that just nothing more than really a statement that, yes, we can do it in San Juan County. Why not the rest of the country doing it? And I'm not sure really, I buy the argument that it's really changes elections. I mean, if you vote for first, second, and third choice, how is that not getting multiple votes for the same position by one voter? And anyway, a lot of questions I have in my mind. At the end of the day, I think Dave really said it beautifully, that if this is going to ever happen, it could be done through a system different than the charter. And then Janet suggested maybe a referendum. Why not? That seems like a fair way of doing it, and not to get us bogged down with changing our constitution to say that elections have to be done that way. So thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to hearing more.
I'm going to call on myself quickly, if I may. And my question, when we have Mylene and maybe Randy weigh in on this as well, is if this is possible through councilmatic action. I'm not sure of that. And so that's another question I would have, actually. So are there others that haven't spoken yet from the commission? Olivia, please, and then Jane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have spent a lot of time thinking about this subject after the presentations that we had. And I believe that our current system that we have is flawed. Just in this last election, I personally experienced 2 flaws just within my household with our current, way that we vote. I received my ballot 4 weeks in advance when I shouldn't have, because I was put on as overseas military all of a sudden. My roommate received 2 ballots. He did not vote twice, because I made sure of that, because we are an honest household, to be very clear. But our current system is not perfect. And I think about changing the way that our county is voting, the way that our state is voting, and wonder about the flaws that it will also have. And I am still very unsure of why this would be a good idea to amend our charter at this point. I'm not saying that I'm against ranked choice voting. I just, like Janet, don't really understand the full value of us putting it into the charter at this point, especially if Washington State has not adopted it. I would really love to hear from Randy or Mylene, just like Kevin, to say if we choose as a county to move forward with ranked choice voting in the future, who needs or has the power to do that? Is it simply it must be in the charter, or is it something that the council can do?
Thank you. Jane.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I, like Olivia, have thought a lot about this. I started thinking about it when our elections committee first started talking about it, when we were still meeting. Tony, I miss our elections committee. We were the best, just kidding. Okay. No, on a more serious point, and to something Olivia just mentioned, also to Tony's comments, what really strikes me is that introducing a change of this nature is, for some people, scary. For some people, something they're fearful of. It's change. And that has a heck of a lot to do with the fact that people don't fully understand the system. And so we could debate for, until next week about the merits or not of this system. But the fact of the matter is you really need to dive into the details and understand it. And so, I think we don't really have the benefit of having enough solid information about it. And I would say that's probably the case for every single person on this call, including the elected officials on this call. And I very clearly remember Mylene telling us that, it's not yet, it didn't make it at the state level yet. Maybe the county wants to entertain it when it gets passed at the state level.
Well,
And I can see some argument for that. and I'm not opposed to that idea. I guess I'm simply making the point that I think it would represent a really, really important democratic change in the way in which elections are conducted. And that is already proven to be the case in many places in the United States. And I, and if you're not aware of that, then it means you need to do more research into it. And I also agree with Sharon that it is not something that is meant to benefit any particular political party. It's meant to give people more choice. And it's meant to give people who don't think they have an opportunity to really get elected be able to stand. And so my feeling is that this could represent a really interesting reform. Perhaps we're not ready for it, but I think that it's well worth our consideration. And I would like to hear from either Randy Gaylord or from Eileen Henley about, is there another way in which this can be put forward, or does it need to be in the election section of the charter? So I am interested in particularly Randy's perspective on that. And I think indeed it's something that everybody has an opinion on. So I think it's a matter, what we need is, we need objective, input from our elected officials on this matter so that we can make a decision on what to do next. That's where I stand. Thank you.
Okay, other members of the commission? Okay, Bob and then Paul.
I've spoken once, so I want to make
Okay,
sure
let's
everybody else.
Go to Paul, and then Bob, and then Sharon, you had your hand up
Thank you.
earlier. So if you wanted to go a second time, you can on this subject. And then what I'd like to do, well, let's go to Paul first.
Well, I had an opportunity to run elections here in San Juan County, 5 elections. There had initially 3 people running, and then I ended up with 2, and I had opposition in 2 other times. But as Tony has put out, we don't have a lot of people running, in both Bob and Sharon and even Dave talked about large groups of people. Talked in New York, we talked, large groups of candidates. We don't have that in San Juan County. I don't think I've ever seen it that way. I don't know what benefit it would have for us here, but that's kind of where I'm from, and but I'm also listening to the rest of you too, because we all have our own opinions. So thank you.
Okay, Bob, please.
Yeah, as much in favor of ranked choice voting as I am, I did want to be fair. I wanted to let folks know who may not have seen it, a comment that Bill Apple had to make, and he's off on medical, so he couldn't be here. But he sent a paragraph out that really gave me pause and made me back up a step, at least from my strong advocacy. And that was a very simple thing, which was in this day and time with all this stuff going around about voter fraud and people's confidence being unfairly undermined in our elections, that if we came out with a system that caused people to scratch their heads and maybe not fully understand what was going on, is that a good thing for us as far as confidence in the fact that elections are being conducted correctly? I'm just saying that in fairness to Bill, because he brought that out. I'm still in favor, but that's something to consider. That's all.
Excellent. Sharon, you had your hand up earlier. Did you want to say anything else before we have the auditor and the attorney and our prosecutor speak to us?
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple of things real briefly, and then Jane wants to speak too. Yeah, just I put some links in the chat, and just to help people see that this is not a partisan thing at all. Ranked choice voting. It's working for people in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. But frankly, we haven't had that many people running in San Juan County. And if we had ranked choice voting, we certainly might see more people stepping up to run. So, I just like us to kind of think forward. And that's so much what we're doing as a charter review committee here. We're thinking forward into the next 10 years. And we're not going to be able to do that effectively if we think back of what has happened in the past. Okay. And also in terms of voter fraud, and not even voter fraud, but election fraud, we have very serious problems to fix in this country with election fraud and gerrymandering and the lack of paper trails, I don't think that impacts ranked choice voting. I'm in favor of anything that makes the system more accountable and more democratic and more transparent. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? Sorry, Jane, yes.
Just quickly wanted to follow on from what Sharon just said in terms of sort of responding to Paul's concerns. I mean, we are looking forward. We're not looking backward and how many people ran for election in the past. In fact, what we're trying to encourage is more citizen engagement in the county government and trying to include more and be more diverse in the way in which we outreach to citizens and enable people to feel more involved in local government. And I think, if anything, this kind of reform creates that opportunity. So while for the last 20 years, 25 years, may have just been 2 people running for certain positions, doesn't mean that's going to be where young people are coming up. So just on that point. And then in response to Bob, and, I think I appreciate you bringing, Bill's voice into this. And to me, Bill's comments demonstrate the lack of opportunity to really discuss this and educate ourselves about this as a commission. Because I read his comments as well. And philosophical as they weren't grounded in what struck me as, deep research and understanding of these issues. I really would have loved to have had him here to be able to, and maybe we'll still have that opportunity, but I don't think we're going to talk about this anymore for the follow-on meeting. But I mean, I think it would have been valuable to have Bill here. And if anything, it would have demonstrated that we all really need to learn more about it. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to ask Patty and Kyle, you're the only 2 that haven't spoken. If you just have anything you'd like to contribute before we call on Mylene and Randy.
Just that I have been struck and agree with a lot of the comments here. Number one, San Juan County might have more people running if it were ranked choice. It's possible. And 2, I love the idea of putting it into the possibility for the future when this is possible, but having it in the charter just to say, hey, it's okay. Yeah, I totally agree with those. And also about Bill's comment, yes, the whole voting system is being called fraudulent by people, and it's not. But as long as you have a paper trail, which we would still have even with this, it just would have to be recounted again in the same algorithmic way, however we do that. But it could be trusted as much as any other voting. Thank you.
Great. Kyle, did you have anything you wanted to contribute at this point?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'm personally in support of ranked choice voting in concept. I think what's far more important is that the voters in the county have an opportunity to vote on the idea and the concept themselves, which is what we're talking about. There is some risk about the load of amendments and material before the voters. But, listening to the various contributions here, I can't say that I'm the gatekeeper on that level to keep people from having the opportunity to vote on that. So I did want to just close my part and say thank you to Sharon for doing the preparation for this, and I'm very interested in the input that the auditor and prosecuting attorney have.
Great. Randy and Mylene, we have a handful of questions. You heard them, but I will repeat them. And I'm not sure. I think some of them are very clearly Mylene in your department. I feel like a couple of them may be in Randy in yours, so I'll let you 2 figure that out. The questions that I have are, one is, are there other ways other than the charter for this to take place? And a subset of that question was the one that I raised, which is, could this be done through councilmatic action? And then the other subset of that one is, could it be done through referendum initiative? And Randy, my follow on to you on that is a longer conversation I look forward to having with you, which is the local initiative process actually real? Because when I read our recent case on that, I have a lot of questions there, but that's for another date. So is there another way other than through the charter? The next question is, will this, if we were to do it in San Juan County, would it impact beyond our county elected officials? And then a general question for you both, actually, because I think it is definitely in both your camps, is if this were to be a recommendation to the auditor or to the county council, could the auditor move forward on something like this? Will that take additional action either through the charter or the council, or does the auditor have the ability to do this? And those are the questions that we have right now.
I'd like to begin. Kevin, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. This may not be the right order, but this is the order in which I took my notes. First of all, you are correct that the council does not tell the auditor what to do in the regard to elections and does not direct how elections are run. Of course, it's very prescribed by state law. There was a time when the council did make the choice of whether to go by vote by mail or not. That was the only choice within the council's prerogative. But were you ever the ones who voted for that? Great choice. Anyway, ever since the state went to all vote by mail, ever since the state went to all vote by mail for all counties, that does not apply. As far as whether you can do it another way, and Randy can fill in some more here, it's my understanding that a simple initiative which becomes an ordinance in the county, ordinances have to act within state statute. But if we change our constitution, our charter, then we have more leeway. So I believe it would take a charter amendment. However, you can have an initiative for a charter amendment. Charter amendments do not have to go through a charter review commission. They can be proposed by council and they can be proposed by initiative. In fact, the one that we ran one a couple of years ago to permit biennial budgeting, I actually initiated that, but council is the one who put it on the ballot. And so there are other ways to amend the charter, even though that is the way you would probably need to do it. Just a comment, somebody mentioned that municipalities were mentioned as having RCV. And some states, cities run their own elections. In fact, it used to be that way in Washington many, many years ago. And then they moved all elections to the county level. Also, just to mention that somebody mentioned paper trails. We have paper ballots. We have paper trails. Just couldn't resist that one because, okay, so state changes. I mentioned, yes, that RCV was in a bill this year which did not pass. As proposed, what that bill said was that each district within the county, so the cemetery district, the port district, the school district, could choose independently whether to do RCV or regular voting. Now that didn't pass, and it might come back in a different way.
It will be in a different way.
But it is my opinion, as was meant, I think Sharon raised it, someone else did, that if you wanted to put this in, wait for the state, and I think it would be so much safer to wait for the state, that the county will, the council, because they'll probably take the legislative authority, will opt into RCV if it becomes available at the state level. I think that's a realistic alternative. And I feel like there's one more thing you asked that I missed, but
maybe we'll turn it over to Randy, and if you
yeah,
remember,
go ahead.
back to you. Randy, please. You're muted, Randy.
You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. And thank you, Eileen. Very good summary. It's nice to have an experienced election superintendent here, supervisor of elections, done a lot of elections, knows what she's doing, has a good staff. Okay, first, what officers will be covered by a decision that amends the charter or taken by the county council and or the county auditor? It's only the officers of the county. The officers of the county are listed in the county charter. Okay, county sheriff, county treasurer, county clerk, county auditor, county assessor, and the legislative body. Okay, the Constitution says the election of the prosecuting attorney should not be altered by local charter. So that can't be changed. So I think that there are 8 positions that would be eligible to be subject to ranked choice voting. And that's all, just 8.
Randy, judges?
It would not cover the special districts.
And the judges?
And it would not cover the judges.
Yep, thank you.
Now, as to the whether the charter would need to be amended, I believe, I just looked at that question. Thanks, Jane, for bringing that up here. I had not looked at that previously. What the charter says is in section 5.10 that except as provided in this charter, nominating primaries and elections of all these various officers shall be conducted in accordance with general laws governing the election of nonpartisan county officers. And my general understanding of the general laws governing the election of nonpartisan county officers are the state laws regarding those officers. And we have 2 sets of laws out there for elections, one for partisan offices and one for nonpartisan offices. And they really become quite meaningless now that we have the top 2 primary system, or they become much less important and play more into the appointment process than the election process. But because as my understanding is ranked choice voting has 1 election and not a primary and a nominating election. So that I believe that under a language art charter, we anticipate following the state law for both a top 2 nomination election and a general election in November. So there would require a change to the charter or an option to the charter in order to make that effective.
Okay. Randy, just clarification, and Mylene, you touched on this, but maybe I'm just stating the obvious here, but the Charter Commission is not the only way to change the charter. That can be done through initiative or by the council.
That is correct. There's a slightly different initiative process or council process. And yes, it can be altered by the people and by the council, as Mylene has indicated. I would note that in the Pierce County, you may recall when Pierce County spoke, they had public vote for ranked choice voting to implement it and a public vote to end it. Okay, so they had to take it to the public both times to start it and to end it.
Can I ask Randy a question, Kevin?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Randy,
I guess that's it to Randy too, but
if it is your opinion that only the 8 basically not everybody but the prosecutor could be elected that way,
and the judges,
and the judges,
and not even the other districts. So we would virtually every time be running 2 elections because the ballots would be different. That's wow, disappointing. I hope that when the state passes it,
did you have a question in there, Jane?
there'll be options that will be more palatable.
Yeah, and let me just comment on one other thing. I meant to say this. We've been in lawsuits over our election process before, and we had this auditing system that was challenged, and it was not certified by the Secretary of State, and it created a difficulty for us. We had to agree to end using it, you know, when you choose to use systems that are not certified and approved by the Secretary of State, it opens us up to greater uncertainty. I can just say that in general.
Yeah. Thank you, Randy. Jane, did you have a question for either of our electeds here or just in general? You're muted.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I did. I had a question for our prosecuting attorney, and that was with regard to, for example, district school board elections. Are you saying that ranked choice voting would not apply to district school board elections? And that's my first question. My second question is one that just escaped my head. Darn it, you were just talking about something and I just totally lost it. So if you could just answer that first question for me, I apologize. And I'll remember the other one in a second.
School board elections are done as a matter of state law, And so they would have to continue following state law. The
Okay.
charter does not influence school board officers or school board elections.
Okay, excellent. And that follow-on question, which was there, and then it just disappeared again. So I'll have to give it a pass. Oh no, I remember what it was. I remember what it was. My understanding, I'm sorry, I apologize. My understanding, phew, that was quick recovery. My understanding was that if ranked choice voting were brought in, say at the state level, and it happened in our county as well, there would not need to be primaries. Are you saying that there would need to be primaries? My understanding that you don't need to have primaries if you adopt ranked choice voting, and that's what we heard from Fair Vote Washington. So
What I was quoting is our charter section 5.10,
okay.
which states that there will be nominating primaries and elections shall be conducted. Nominating primaries and which is an implication that you need to go through both of those steps in accordance with state law, which would mean that you need to change the charter in order to implement ranked choice voting.
Okay.
I believe
Can I-
also Mylene's point was that she would possibly have to do primaries for the other non-county charter candidate, or the non-county candidates as well. So there would still be a primary, just not for the 8 or maybe it's 8 elected county electeds. Jane,
Which
go
means
ahead.
2 ballots.
Yeah, and Jane, go ahead. And then Tony, you're next. I apologize. I have to step away for 1 second. So Tony, you'll be after Jane.
My quick follow on to that though, Prosecuting Attorney Gaylord, is if Washington State, and it's a question for you, if Washington State down the line approves ranked choice voting, then and ranked choice voting as a system of voting does not require a primary. How does a charter county like ours respond to that? How do we adapt to that? Or I guess we have the option not to. My second issue is, or question is, let's hypothetically say we wanted to vote as a commission to put it on the ballot and it was approved, but even just getting on the ballot, would that not imply a necessary change to that section of the charter to accommodate the non-requirement for a primary for RCV?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm thinking here, is that we'd need to amend that section of the charter.
Yes, and I think our auditor, Mylene Henley, spoke to this when she talked about the way in which we changed the charter to accommodate a biennial budgeting system. If our charter gets in the way of a direction that the county council wants to go, they can propose, or the way state law goes, they can propose an amendment, and that can be accomplished in the next election cycle.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my turn, I guess. Thank you, Mylene and Randy. Appreciate that. The question that I have is, and I want to make sure that I have it clearly understood. And I know the charter calls for that the council, and in the form of initiative, both the public and the council can bring forward a change to the amendment. And if that happens and the voters approve that change, then that becomes the practice of the county as far as elections are concerned, or any other topic is concerned. So in essence, an amendment in the charter is not really necessary. If the public is interested in this particular item, they can bring it forward as a proposal, I guess, collect signatures, bring it to Mylene to put it on the ballot, and the council can actually do the same. So it seems to me that's much more cleaner and much more effective way of doing it, if that actually is the case. So is that the case?
Tony, if you're asking if one can by initiative, without initiative to the county code, change the way we vote, I think the answer is no. It would have to be a charter amendment. Because otherwise, both our charter and state law tell us how to run elections. And county law cannot supersede state law, except in some areas in the charter, and I get fuzzy about what the charter can amend and what it can't, but Randy has, I'm sure, can speak to that.
Well, yeah, that's my understanding as well. There is some fuzziness in the charter
Well,
currently, but
but the problem is, see, there's two kinds of initiatives. You can have an initiative, a regular initiative changes ordinances, county code. It becomes ordinance, it becomes law in the county. But you can have an initiative to the charter, which is a charter amendment done by initiative. The process is the same. You get the signatures, you get it, send, gets on the ballot. But one amends the county code and the other amends the county charter.
There's slightly different timing rules and signature requirements or number of signatures to gather and so on. Look at section 9.33, amendments by the public of the county charter. That is the process that the auditor, Mylene Henley, and I are speaking of. And yes, there is a process for the public to initiate through a process that looks very much like initiatives, changes to the charter at any time, every year.
yeah. And just to follow up, Mr. Chair, just to follow up.
go
So how
ahead.
about the council? The county council has also the authority to bring forward to the public a change
Yeah.
that the public can vote on. So is that also because I've seen that in the charter.
Yes, and they do so through a process called an ordinance.
Okay.
And so that's after a public hearing and notice in public hearing, they propose how the charter will look. And then it's subject to ratification, I guess is the way to say it, by the public.
Okay.
Approved.
I have
Thank you.
Anne-Marie and then Jane.
Thank you both. Appreciate that.
You're muted, Anne-Marie.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to have ranked choice voting added as an amendment to the charter and have the language say when the state adopts it.
Seconded.
The motion is second on the floor, under discussion. I would say, if I may, that, so I've actually spoken to a couple of sponsors and another who will be a lead on this next year. I imagine that the new bill will be changed from how it read last year, and it would not have a separation. It would basically say counties as the jurisdiction and the currently responsible for elections, that if counties could opt in, is the language that I'm hearing. Now, who knows? If we are simply putting it forward as the way the motion was stated, however, I go back to Janet's piece, which is this something we need to put on the ballot now with the 20 some odd other amendments that we're discussing that are immediate priorities for us? And remember, in 2 days, we're going to be having a discussion where I'm going to be pushing for us to really try and cut some of those. And so if this is an amendment that will be on the charter and going on the ballot, but it's going to wait a year anyway, my question would be, if that's the case, then why are we putting it on the ballot right now and before the voters right now, as opposed to waiting a year and then having an initiative process or a councilmatic process after the county, after the state legislature were to act on that? God, I see a lot of hands going up. So that's my comment on this. I actually really, I will say, I really appreciate the idea of ranked choice voting. I am unsure for the reason, for all the points raised in this discussion on whether or not I think it should be on the charter right now. So I have, let me get them all. Sorry, if you can get your hands back up. I have Patty and then David and then Bob. Did I miss anybody? Jane, sorry. Okay, so Patty, David, Bob, Jane.
I just want to say, to your point, it's very much something the public has in their mind right now. If we ignore it and wait, they will know it. I mean, I get people all the time asking me, what about ranked choice voting? Well, I haven't been working on it, but they brought it up in the town halls. They may bring it up again if we don't, come up with it. I just know it's on their mind. That's all.
Understood. Okay, David.
Yeah, I'm not sure why the idea of waiting to implement it until the state takes action. If people really want it, why don't they just do it now and not wait for the trigger of the state to take action? So I'm not really sure I understand, Anne Marie, what is how that's in the best interest of people who are supporting this idea. The second thing is, if you do wait for the state, and even if you don't wait for the state, how do we know what the state is going to decide to do? I mean, they may have come up with a structure for doing these that we don't want to do, because there's some, I'm not sure how detailed they're going to be and what the options will be that they'll give the various counties, but we may end up not liking what comes out of the state. So I think if you want to do something, do it now. I'm not saying I'm going to vote for it, because I'm still a little bit on the fence, but I would not wait for the state. If you want to do it, do it. I also think that we have a problem in search, or a solution search of a problem here. Only 8 races here locally and not many candidates being on the ballot. I mean, if you had 3, I don't think it would make any difference how the outcome turns out. If you had 3, if you had 5 or 10, I think it might make a difference. But I agree with Paul and Tony on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, and then Jane.
Withdraw my question.
Okay, Jane.
Muted. Yeah, okay, good, I'm not muted now. I think, Mr. Chair, that if we decide to proceed with a vote on this motion, that the issue of whether it be on the ballot for November or of this year or November of next year is a separate matter. I think that we need to take a vote and we deal with that separately. And I, because I will say that I have significant concerns about, the process of whittling down the number of proposed amendments, and that is very much worthy of a separate discussion. Thank you.
Yep. Bob.
Boy, does that raise a possibility that's interesting. Thank you, Jane. Could we consider, I don't know whether we can do this, but can we consider today putting it on the ballot in November of 22?
So
is it possible?
Randy could answer that question directly. What I will say is that we are going to have a discussion about our work going forward. And to put things on the ballot in 2022, I believe we have to continue our work. And so we would split it. So the precedent comes from King County most recently. And what King County did is they decided that they were going to put things on the ballot the first year, and then they continued their work as a charter review commission until the December of that year. So for us, it would mean we pick, and I'm throwing out numbers, say we pick 6 items and they're on the ballot this November, and we choose that we are not dissolving our work, that our work is continuing until December 31st of this year. And during that period, we pick the ballot, the propositions that will be on the ballot for the following November. And so that can, to Jane's point, can be a separate discussion. I don't think we have to answer that today. I think the question before us is the motion, which is if there's enough of this commission that feels like ranked choice voting is something that we should put forward, but maybe we should wait until we have some clarity from the state on that. And so what we would do is is vote for the question today. And that emotion again is we want ranked choice voting as soon as, I'm summarizing, but as soon as the state authorizes it. Yeah, Bob.
It sounds like I didn't make my question clear. I apologize for that. What I was looking for was clarity as to whether or not we could vote today that we wanted ranked choice voting on the ballot, but then not have it bunched in with all of them that are going this November, just send it to next November without extending our work on into the next half year.
I will ask Randy's guidance, but my feeling on that is by taking that motion, we by default are tonight saying we're continuing our work past June, and we're going to put, because if we're doing, because the way it works is if we put everything on the ballot for this November, we also take action to then basically dissolve, and we're done. And we say formally, we're done with our work. These are our recommendations. And that's a process that we go through in the coming weeks. If we choose to, we could continue our work through the end of the year. So by I'll call it a friendly amendment that you're proposing, we would be by default saying that we're going to continue our work. And I want to, Randy, am I correct on that?
You are muted, Randy.
You're muted, Randy.
Trying to be careful here. When you make the referral to the county council, they then are charged with directing it to the county auditor, and the matter goes on the ballot at the next election 90 days after. If the next general election 90 days after is next year, then they will have to wait until next year to do that. And because you are in office for all of this year, or until you make your final recommendation to the county council, you will have the opportunity to split it. But there's another option too that I should advise you of. It's that you also have the opportunity, and this should be taken up in connection with your discussion, you have the opportunity to make recommendations to the county council and to alter items that you consider to be amendments to be recommendations, and therefore still meet.
Yeah. Right. And Randy's last point is part of the discussion we'll be having beginning on Thursday, which is, it's not, Jane, to your point, whittling down. I used the wrong terminology. Some of it, I believe we can whittle down, frankly, but some of it, I think, could be recommendations opposed to propositions on the ballot and so on. Okay, I see Anne Marie, and then I have Dave, and then I have Sharon, and then I have Bob again.
Okay,
Olivia, you have
Olivia was before me.
I'm sorry, Olivia, please.
Thank you. I hear the motion on the table is to add, but after hearing what Randy just said, it seems like with the motion, you would also need to strike many areas of the charter for it to be legitimate to add ranked choice voting to the charter. So it kind of seems a little incomplete. That's my comment. I know that this is more of like, oh, are we moving this forward or not? But I'm just reading through here, and there's if we're going to do that, there's a lot of areas that you would need to strike as well. So
I believe we could that it could be understood that the county council would have to make an amendment to the charter when they were doing this, and so they would have to change those sections of the charter as well. But I think your point is well made, that there's a whole section of the charter that talks about the elections that would need to be changed when this were to be implemented. But I don't know if the motion today on the floor would force those changes at this point in time, because we'd still be operating under those changes until that change took place. So I have Dave, and then Sharon, and
What
then,
about me?
and then Anne Marie, and
I
then
thought I was before Olivia. And
sorry,
gave
guys.
Olivia my
Sorry.
seat.
Fine, Anne Marie, and then Dave, and then Sharon, and then Bob.
I just wanted to clarify, because David Dellendorf questioned why I said that about waiting, and what I thought I heard from Mylene and or Randy was that it would be much smoother to put ranked choice voting in place in Washington once the state had adopted it, or the Secretary of the State had adopted it, and the Secretary of State had put it in motion, because then it would be tested. But for us to have the option would be perfect if it was already in the charter. And that's what my motion was intending to do. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, I have Dave, Sharon, Bob, and then if folks don't object, maybe we could call the question.
Thank you. I'd like just to point out that this is an idea that's been in the state, in Olympia, for a long time. They've been trying to move a bill out. They've been trying to get it passed. And if we pass this here now, and if San Juan County is waiting, the people lobbying in Olympia will point to that. It's not just, it won't be just this, us operating in a vacuum. The state will see that we are waiting for this, and that San Juan County is leading here, and there will be more motivation to actually pass it out of Olympia. So I think this this solution is a great one for us. Thank you.
Sharon?
Full disclosure, I actually don't have anything to say, but I raised my arm because I got my second COVID shot today and it's starting to hurt. But I approve of this whole conversation is going nicely. Thank you.
Okay, Bob?
This is a question for Randy, unless Kevin, you can answer it. And that is, if, let's say we have 10 items that we have passed and we want to see on the ballot, can we give the county council 5 of them with our deadline for this November, and then just wait till August and send to the county council the other 5 for the following November?
Let's circle back on that in a moment. Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate all the passion discussing this, and I think Anne Marie clarified the motion a little more for me. It seems to me this is a very good example of not ready for prime time event to be added to the charter. I'm going to vote no on this. I would like to be on the record as voting no, because I don't think it's really ready to be put on a charter. I think we should really wait and have the state resolve the issues with it. And then, as Randy and Mylene said earlier, there are ways that this could be put in motion via either council moving it forward to be voted upon, or a citizens group that can put that as a resolution or whatever the terminology is called to move it forward. So I think we should wait.
Thank you very much, Tony. Randy? I'll come back to you in just a second, Sharon. Randy, I just wanted to clarify, I believe you heard the exchange between Olivia and I. I think Olivia's point is very well made, and I just wanted to make sure I had it correct. And the question was, if this motion were to pass today, and again, the motion is that we are approving it we want to move forward when the state authorizes it. My understanding would be that would not mean that those changes in the charter, that section, have to be done now, but those changes would take place when the state authorized it and then we started moving into the process. Is that correct?
I don't think so. I think you would, you could write the changes that say that.
But do we need to?
Well, you provide now for nominating primaries and elections, and under ranked choice voting, you don't have nominating primaries. So that would be inconsistent with the language of the charter. It would be appropriate to make a change to section 5.33, whatever it is, election procedures. It is, however, I'm not sure I agree with Commissioner Roseberry about the extensiveness of changes. I think that it can just be done with the changes to the procedures section.
Okay. Thank you. Sharon?
Yeah, I just want to say that if we were to not put it in the charter now, there's, I have some concern that incumbents would have a tendency to not want ranked choice voting. They don't want more people to run against them. In terms of initiative process, it's quite a painstaking process to gather the number of signatures needed. But if people just have it on the ballot and they vote for it, it's just a simpler way of getting the people what the majority of people want.
So you're saying that would be in favor of the motion that's on the floor?
Yes.
Just to clarify. Kyle, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to call the question.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Davies. Question has been called to Anne Marie. Do you want to repeat the motion again, just so everybody's clear?
Yeah.
Okay, the motion is to have ranked choice voted as an amendment, as an added amendment to the charter, and that the language would say it would be implemented when it was available at the state level.
Or could we say authorized?
authorized at the state level. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Bob has a question.
Bob,
Actually, it wouldn't be perfect because it's authorized now, right? But not by the legislature. I mean, it's authorized for the
it's not
small
authorized
races.
it's not authorized by the state, I don't believe.
Who's authorized it?
No one.
I don't think the state has authorized it formally.
I'm not trying to get in the
not.
way. I just want to make sure that the
Yeah,
motion is correct.
and I appreciate that, Bob. I think that the motion is correct.
All right.
So the motion has been called. Is there a vote to, we have to vote to call the question. So is everybody ready to call the question? I'm just going to do that by consensus and nods, which is normally what I do. But I want to make sure we're going by the rules here. Okay, so we're going to call the question. So all those in favor, please vote aye and raise your hand so I can get a count here.
Aye.
Aye.
I have Anne Marie, and I have Sharon, and I have Patty, and I have Dave, and I have Kyle, and I have Jane. Is that it? I have Anne Marie, Patty, Sharon, Dave, Bob, Kyle. Am I missing anybody? So that means, right, what I have right there is 7.
Oh, okay.
Can you raise your hands again? Let's just make sure. All those in favor. I just want to make sure. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with Jane. Yeah. So the motion fails.
Oh,
Well, do we know the motion fails?
how,
Don't we have to take
how
the
many,
votes?
how many against and how many
I think we
abstain?
should take the no votes.
We'll finish it. I will finish it. All those opposed, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. And all
Motion
those,
passes.
and any abstaining.
I'm abstaining.
1, 2, 3 abstentions. No, Bob, to your point, I do not believe it passes. It doesn't pass with the majority. I think we need a majority of the commission. Randy, can I get a clarification from you? I believe we need a majority of the commission for something to be put on the charter, not a majority of the commissioners present. Is that correct?
It's according to your rules. You adopted a set of rules. I'd have to consult your rules.
I
on
need to
those.
read them too then. I believe it's,
I think it's a majority of those voting in favor of the matter, but I'm not, I can't say.
okay.
The commission rules anticipate that there will be some absences from time to time, so.
Yes, of course. And
So
so,
I think it's those present, and the abstentions do not count as a vote for
No.
or against. I forget how abstentions are counted. I think they're counted against.
Abstentions are not a positive vote, and a
Yeah,
small.
they're not a positive vote, so I think it's a 7-7 vote. With, or a 7-3. There's not, you need 8
The
of you.
abstentions do not vote. Yeah.
There's 14 of you here today. You'd need 8 to make a majority.
Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Ah!
Let's hear it for the chair.
Woo!
Clear it
Can
up.
Can I say that the reason I abstained was there's a lot of research that has to be done on this. I mean, it sounds like, Randy and Mylene, who are experts in this, have questions. I'm just hoping that there are going to be answers ready by whenever we're bringing this forward, because if we don't have answers on this, this is going to get killed. So I'm hoping someone's going to do all the research on this.
And I want to say, if I may call on myself, please, that I would be inclined to support revisiting this if we don't have those answers. My hesitation this evening is I have a lot of unanswered questions. I wanted to abstain, and my abstention does not, like I said, I am fully supportive of this going forward, but I have a lot of concerns at this point because I have questions that aren't answered. And I have worked with Randy and with Mylene for 20 years, and trust them both, and they have unanswered questions. And so I'm willing to let it move forward at this point with my vote, but would be one of the 5 calling for a revisiting of this in a week and a half or a week or 3 days if we don't have a little bit more information. So I would ask Sharon and others who are the strong proponents of this, and I know you've already spent a lot of time. I unfortunately don't have the time to do my homework on this anymore. I did a lot a few weeks ago, but I'm concerned. I'm nervous about this, and I would push for revisiting it before we finalize our final tally. And I want to remind us of one other thing. And then Olivia, I saw your hand, I believe, and then Jane's as well. So I'll call on both of you next. We are going to go through and adopt all of these things. And then with Megan, who's come on board's help, we're going to compile the entire final document. And then we're going to adopt that. And we're going to say, this is what we're putting forward. And then the separate piece will be, these are the recommendations going to the county council or maybe to another elected official. So there will be another revisit of all of the actions that we're taking as well. I hope that that does not become an opportunity for each of us to nitpick at the things that we don't like. But on this one, there's a lot of unanswered questions.
Kevin, can I say something real quick?
No, Mylene, wait, please. I'm going to call on Olivia and then Jane.
I just wanted to give a quick explanation of why I voted no. It just feels kind of like the cart before the horse situation where the state hasn't approved it yet. And I'm interested to see what our commission comes up with and where we can go forward with it. But I was pretty close to abstaining, just like the rest of the group. I just feel like it needs some more research. So thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Jane.
Yeah, I mean, I also agree. I feel it needs more research, but I also, we have spoken numerous times about the rather intelligent electorate that we have. I would appeal to commissioners who know that you have constituents who support this to please assist in putting, you know, in a informal way, so to speak. You know, we can reach out to these people. I've done it myself to get information from them that will enable us to further inform ourselves of this. And if we need to check in with Mylene and the auditor's office, if we need to check in the prosecuting attorney's office because we want to verify things, fine. But it's like there's a small task team that needs to be created around this. Somebody's got to lead that, and it's got to work quickly. So that's my position on that.
Thank you, Jane. Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason I raised my hand when Prosecuting Attorney Randy was talking about the majority of people present. I have a question on that because I'm going to challenge that if I may, and I, you know, very respectfully, because if there were only 5 of us present, the majority would have been 3 to 2.
That would not have been a quorum of the commission. We wouldn't have been able to hold a meeting.
Right, but that's my point. The quorum of a 5-member board is 3. When you have 3 present, that's a quorum, but you have to have full 3 of them voting for something to pass. You cannot pass it with a 2-to-1 vote in a 5-member commission or a 5-member board. So I would have to be convinced that an 18-member board, 15 people show up or 14 people show up, it would seem to me that the majority would still need to be more than just the persons present, similarly to what a 5-member board would have to have. If only 3 people show up on a 5-member board, the vote has to be unanimous. It cannot be 2-to-1.
So
So I
Tony,
think there's a change here. So
yeah, so your challenge is noted, and I have already made a note actually that I have to do my homework and go back and read the sections of Robert's Rules, small meetings, which are also they're kind of loose too. And I did not, and I tried to fill some of the gaps in the memo that I sent to the commission early on, where I described some things and said, this isn't in there, but this is what we're anticipating. I did not address this. And so if it is not addressed, that's a question on whether or not a majority of the members present can act upon this. And we could also look back at Robert's Rules in general and not small rules to defer back to that if it's not defined in small meetings.
yes, I mean, if I may add to that, Mr. Chair, if only 10 of us showed up, which is a majority of the commission, the vote cannot be 6-4. That passes something. That seems to me that's not unrealistic to have.
I think your challenge, not only is your challenge noted, I think your point is very well made. And if we find, we need to say that if we find in either small rules or if there's a clear explanation or just or rule in large Roberts rules, if it's not defined in small boards, then I would come back and say that Tony's challenge is in order and the motion needs to be revisited or actually pulled back. And so we will get back to folks on that. But my understanding is that, well, actually, I'm not sure. But Randy was saying majority present, and I think he and I both had questions on that. So I'd say we go with where we are today and let us do our homework, and we may be revisiting this, maybe not as soon as tomorrow, because I have to do a couple other things in my life besides the charter. I see Bob and then Jane.
I just checked Robert's rules, and it's not the majority of the organization. It's not the majority of the people present. It's the majority of the people voting. 50% or more of the people voting passes as long as there's a quorum and it's a legal vote.
Okay.
According to Robert's rules.
Well,
Can you check? Hang on, Maureen. I've got Jane and then you. Bob, while you're excitedly diving into that, can you see if you can find any language for small boards for Robert's
Okay,
rule?
let me go back.
It's harder to find. It's in there though. So I'm
Okay.
gonna go Jane and then Maureen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just gonna say that I think it's extremely important that the vote that took place today stand unless we get information that it's not valid. Because so I really hope that all votes in favor, that all abstentions and all noes were recorded with complete clarity, because we can't be going back, and because people didn't show up today, that's not the way you run our business. So we need to refer to the rules.
Yes, exactly. And so whatever the rule says is what it says. I believe that Randy's advice was valid, and I actually believe, although like I said, I still have questions. So we need to research this because there is a challenge, and it's appropriate and allowed for any commissioner to challenge a vote under our current rules. And so we just need to revisit the rules and make sure that we are correct. If the challenge was appropriate, then we would need to revisit the motion. My intention right now, though, is that we are not revisiting the motion because we are appropriately under our own rules. But we will investigate that and make sure. Maureen.
I believe we voted in a modified Robert's rules at our first meeting, and that's an important consideration. I also think, while this is a very important thing, it wasn't an original idea on our task list, and we are spending an enormous amount of time on this, and less time on other things that are very important. So I have an issue with our time management.
Bob, thank you, Maureen. Bob, I saw your comment in the chat. So what you're saying is under small rules as well? Small Bob.
Well, I didn't put a comment in the chat, but that is correct. I just checked. Well, the deal is, it's not that it's the same under small rules. I didn't have to even look. Robert's Rules of Order has small organizations and boards as 12 and under.
Yeah, I know. We made an exception to that early on in ours.
Oh. Okay, well, I have to go back then. Take another look.
We're operating under small boards, but
okay, I'll take another look.
Our staff looked and confirmed that the motion probably carries, but
okay, all right, so stop. Okay,
but no, go ahead and keep looking, and I'm sure Tony will anyway, because I know Tony. He's going to spend time on this regardless. But so let me see this. Hang on, Tony, please. You guys, I can't keep up with the chats and you guys. So I'm.
You called my name, so
I know. So Tony, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to. I don't mean to be the one holding. If the vote is the way it is, it's fine with me. I just wanted to record a challenge just because it's the right thing to do. But if the challenge is wrong, I'm very happy to go along with the vote. I know people have worked hard on this, and 7 members have voted, so we're fine. We can probably go forward.
8, but
8.
Yeah,
8
8.
members.
And Tony, to your point, though, the challenge has been noted, and we will move forward. And if we uncover that it was inappropriate, it will be revisited. But at this point, the motion carries. So with that, I'd like to move us on. We got a little less than an hour left and we've got a couple other subjects. The process committee, as Bob mentioned, would like to postpone until Thursday because they've had a little more back and forth at their subcommittee level. I think that sounds fantastic. If there aren't any concerns, I would like to just wait on process committee then and let them present on Thursday. And Bob, does Thursday work for you?
Yes, it kind of has to. Wednesday night is our meeting. It's 7:30 to 9 for anybody who wants to listen in. And we will be considering what our fantastic researcher will have come up with then, and we'll bring it before the full commission on Thursday.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, the next subject is minimum qualifications for elected officials. Who will be leading that conversation?
Well, I'm the chair of the elected, but Dick Rout is the author of this, and I don't think Dick is here tonight. Is that correct?
I have not seen Dick. And I did not.
Therefore, I would say we might have to continue this for the third time. Now, we could look at the list, I mean, but I really feel Dick should be here.
Yeah, Olivia, go ahead. And then David. So Olivia and then David, and I'm gonna go mute and see if
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the, how do I put this? If your topic is on the agenda, we need you to be prepared because we need to go through the topics. If we have, told the public that this is what we're going to talk about, we need to do that. And if you need to change that, we need to know ahead of time because we have announced to the public what we are talking about. In the last couple weeks, there has been a lot of last minute changes. And to me, it seems a little inappropriate to tell the public what we're going to talk about and then we don't do it. So moving forward, we need to stay consistent with the agenda. If you need to make changes, it needs to happen before the meeting, not mid-meeting. Like I didn't know about the process committee not being ready until 3:45 when I logged in. So for the rest of the time, we need to stick to the agenda. I understand Dick not being here, but if you're not ready to present, you're not ready to present. So just a little bit of a prep time beforehand would be much appreciated.
Excuse me, can I respond to you, please? First of all, this has been on the agenda for 2 weeks in a row, and we never got to it because other conversations went longer. So we were prepared. I spoke through texting to Dick just before the meeting, and I had no idea he wasn't going to be here. And I wasn't expecting that we weren't going to talk about the county manager tonight. So I have only the one agenda that was outdated before the meeting. So, we all have to get on the same page here.
So the second agenda was sent out in a timely manner. And I apologize if folks missed it. I do agree with Olivia's point, however, which is folks need to be prepared. And I'm concerned that we're bumping items. And Maureen, that is not a jab at you and it's not a jab at Dick. It's just in general, it's difficult because we're continually bumping items and we've got a few meetings left if we're going to finish these things on time. So let's go to Paul, no, David, and then Paul.
Okay, a question, and then I have a statement. Maureen, have there been any changes since the last time we presented and discussed this issue?
Well, I think there were. Dick took the whole page back and revisited people, and we've never had a chance to present those amended changes.
Okay, follow up. Has it been distributed with the changes that Dick made? Has it already been distributed?
I'm not sure.
Well, I was going to make a motion that we approve the proposed amendment, but I'm not sure I want to make it because if people haven't seen it, then that probably is a bad idea. That's why I was asking you these questions. So I have no further comment. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Paul.
Well, this goes to Maureen, and when we discussed this at the last meeting, I thought Dick was here, and we went through all of these, and we voted on each one of them, did we not?
You mean us as a committee?
Yeah.
Right, but then when the committee heard the changes, the full commission heard the changes, Dick took it back to revise it. And we have not had a chance to bring the revisions back to the full commission.
Do you have the most recent stuff from Dick?
Yes, and we're David Anderson, my colleague, who's so wonderful, has agreed to share it if you want to look at it right now.
Why don't we share that and start going through it?
Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you both for stepping up. I really appreciate it.
Comes.
Great. Thank you, Dave.
I just got a text from Dick. He had a issue. He had to go off island. He's on the ferry and he has one bar, which is why he has not been able to log at this point.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
He was trying. And he says that we should absolutely move forward and that we should adopt all of these.
Of course he does.
Which bar
So
is
there
he
you
at?
go. So Tony, is that legal under the rules if somebody just says it's adopted from a phone?
Only if Dick does it.
Good enough for me.
Only if Dick does it.
Let's
How
go.
come everybody always agrees with Dick? That's not fair.
So Maureen or Dave, which one of you wants to take the lead on this?
Well, Dave isn't on the committee. I'm the chair of the committee.
Maureen, please.
What I can tell you is that we received a number of comments from electeds who felt that the wording of the proposed minimum qualifications was off. So Dick Rout went back to each and every one of them, and he has revised it to, even though he had done that before, this is the new revision, and this is what we would like this commission to approve.
Okay, so this is a recommendation from the subcommittee to us. So do you want
Correct.
to walk us through these?
Well, sure. I think all of us will have to walk through, and I'm going to ask Paul to comment on the assessor, because we added, I think, only the full RCW to that. Can you recall that, Paul?
Yes.
Okay. This is directly from the state.
I was in favor of this as being an assessor at one time, and all of the people who appraise property for tax purposes must be state accredited in order to do that, and that's by law. And here we have it as the assessor also needs to be state accredited and or be state licensed, as you can see here, or state certified real estate appraiser. And they refer to the RCWs that back this up. I think this is really a very good place to be for people who are running for county assessor and know that they have the credentials to do so. And for the taxpayer out there who's receiving the assessments. So I would urge you to vote this positively for the assessor.
Okay, good. And next, the proposed qualifications for the auditor are just as you see them. We made a couple of word changes, changing from a responsible experience to relevant experience. That was the revision on this. And David Dellendorf, you might be wanting to add something. You had some ideas on this. No?
Without seeing the prior draft in front of me, I'm not sure I know what those changes are.
Well, I can.
I do remember relevant being added, yes, and that makes sense.
And I will tell you, David, you also added as a chief deputy.
Yeah, yes, correct. It used to be as the chief deputy. Now it's
Correct.
a chief, because some people have, Mylene has pointed out, she has several people. And it's not a defined term. It's not deputy as a defined term. It's just somebody who is considered to be the next level in their organization. And there may be several people as there are at the auditor's office.
Okay, great. Thank you, David. The county clerk is as is. Again, we've changed responsible to relevant. And I don't think we made any further changes on that one. So we can probably, if you can read that. Dave, if you'll move it forward, please. Thank you. The sheriff, we added no changes to the sheriff's minimum qualifications.
Can I point out one thing about this?
Sure.
Yeah, we had a discussion over qualifications versus requirements, and this training after the end of an election is actually can't be a qualification because that training comes afterwards, 12 months after assuming office. So we went back and forth on that it really didn't make any sense, but that's the wording in the state law. So we decided we have to be consistent with state law, so we left it that way. But it is a little bit confusing as to whether or not that really, well, it can't be a requirement or qualification because it doesn't happen until within 12 months later. So that's a conundrum there.
Maureen, do you want to take questions during, as you are now?
If you'd like, I'm just grateful that David and others are going to pipe in when they feel they got something to offer it. Thank you.
Bob had his hand up.
Go ahead, Bob.
I just want to say that I don't care what they put in the RCW. They can make mistakes in that also. It is not a qualification to be trained after you're elected. That's not a qualification for the office. Qualifications for the office have to be fulfilled when you walk into the elections office with your papers to file. You have to be qualified at that time, and nobody's qualified at that time getting training after they're elected. Right. Sorry, not a qualification.
Yeah.
I'd strike it.
Strike it.
I don't care what the RCW says. I mean, it's still going to be effective that the person's going to have to get the training when they get into office.
And they get hired.
So what we could say there is propose to meet the requirements set out in Washington state law, RCW, blah, blah. Wouldn't that do it? Just meet the requirements?
Patty has her hand up.
Yeah, this is a really crazy thing. You can't have somebody, they can promise that they'll go through the training once they're elected, but it can't be a qualification for them to sign up to run. It just can't.
Okay, but I just said, shall we change it to say meet the requirements?
What do you mean by that?
Meet the requirements for all the training set out in Washington state law and RCW 36.
But Maureen, they can't.
They can't meet the requirements till after they're
impossible.
Well, that's why it says within 12 months.
Well, that's not a requirement then.
After you're elected.
Okay.
You know?
We're saying the same thing back and forth. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
So you guys, does somebody have a recommended change in the language for?
Yes, I do.
Okay, David.
Well, has the motion been made yet or not? I guess.
No, we're not.
Okay, so it's not a friendly amendment, but what I'm going to say is, why don't we just strike out, say, proposed qualifications shall be, and then strike out all the training set out in Washington state law within 12 months of assuming office, and then pick up with 2 years of experience. So the only qualification is 2 years, at least 2 years. It should say at least 2 years of experience as a full, and then get rid of this whole problem over the wording of something that can't be a qualification.
So let me see if I understand. Proposed qualifications shall be
at least 2 years of experience.
That's it?
That's it. Well, experience as a full-time law enforcement officer. Yeah.
And would you state the RCW?
Take out the RCW.
There's nothing in the RCW. I just want clarification.
Yeah, I see your hand. So Anne-Marie?
Yes, if I'm understanding this correctly, the state has no qualifications that are a requirement for being a sheriff. or being the sheriff in a county. And we have talked about how we had a great sheriff for X number of years who came up through as a patrol officer. So we're suddenly going to say that to be the sheriff, someone has to have 2 years of experience as a full-time law enforcement officer when no place else in the state requires that? I'm
He was
just
a
asking the question.
Parole officer, not a patrol officer.
Well,
That
I
was
said, I thought I
documented.
said parole, but maybe I said parole, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that there aren't. I think that's the way, this is what it says in the RCW.
So why do we want to do that? Why do we want to make that a requirement for the sheriff?
The exercise for us was about coming up with revisions so that there would be, and I think in our findings, we say it. And our findings just said this: elected finds that minimum qualifications for the various elected offices are necessary to ensure that candidates for those offices possess the basic skills and experience necessary to effectively perform the duties of the office. And we're just trying to give some basic language to it.
What I'd like to do for process, and Marie, I'll circle back to you in 1 second. I'd like to structure this because I can see this taking the rest of our time and we have a couple other things to discuss. So if we could stop screen share for 1 second, please.
Thank you, Dave.
And Dave, I'm going to have you be tallying back and forth. I apologize for that up front. What I'd like to, Olivia, thank you. I hadn't seen your hand. Olivia, you will go. There was somebody else. Anne Marie, we're going to go back to, and then Olivia. So here's what I'd like to suggest. I'd like to suggest that we take these one at a time and we vote on them. Okay. So what I'd like to do is go back. We're going to go back up to, I can't remember if assessor or which one was the first one. And then we will, hang on, not yet, Dave, sorry. So we'll go back up and we'll go to the first one and we will vote on it. Before that, however, I'd like us to go to public comment, and we'll take public comment because we're at 10 till, which is the appropriate time. And then we will go back to this and we're going to take them one at a time and see if we can't power through them. To Anne Marie's point, some of them, I believe, will need some discussion. So people can put a motion on the table and then we'll have discussion. And then we'll see with an up or down vote if it carries. Are folks okay with that? Can I just get some nods? I know folks.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go to public comment first, and then we're going to come back to this discussion. So if there are any members of the public, we would like you to turn on your video if you're able, and unmute yourself if you would like to speak. Any members of the public? They're as worn out as we are by this conversations. Okay, these conversations. Okay, was that somebody turning on? No. Lauren Stevens, please. And then Mylene, are you commenting as public? Okay, great. So I'll come to you next. Lauren Stevens, please.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for being here.
Low-hanging fruit. I've been reading through minutes, and I think that the minutes should list participants' first and last names each time you write a set of minutes, so people don't have to go back and figure out who said what. I'm wondering when there's going to be a single clear document for people to review ahead of the town halls. Going through the stuff you have on your website is confusing, and there aren't explanations of how you're documenting things. I'm specifically concerned about two of the summaries. One, on the elected versus appointed committee summary of May 5th, there's a question, should the county manager remain appointed? And the findings, and there are 6 findings that all suggest, and the vote suggested that the question was yes. The vote was yes, the county manager should remain appointed. And yet this is the part I don't understand. It says not recommended to full CRC. I don't know what that means, not recommended. So if you could, it would be nice if there was some explanation. Does that mean even though they all agreed that manager should remain appointed, they're not recommending that to the full council? It's confusing for somebody who, only has a limited amount of time to follow you guys. Then I have read through all of the minutes of the Climate and Environment Committee. And as I've read through the minutes, there are very narrow and specific qualifications in the proposal for that commissioner, for a climate and environmental commissioner. But as I read through all the minutes of the meetings, the only discussion mentioned in the minutes were on April 28th, and there was a brief mention in the minutes of a residency requirement and discussion of the word applicable. And I'm just wondering, you know, for people to really understand how you got where you are, it seems that there should be a fuller explanation of how you got to the very, very specific and limited qualifications for that position. And in fact, I'm hearing that Kevin might be planning to run for that position. And I'm concerned about ethical questions about someone participating in writing such limited qualifications that, you know, because of the residency requirements, there would hardly be anyone in this county who would qualify to run for that position with those limited qualifications that we don't know where they came from as the public. And so I'm just concerned to hear from Kevin if he would assert now that he would not run for that position, since he was on that committee. We don't know where those qualifications came from. And just as a note about those qualifications, the idea that you would give someone that much power and need them to have the right kind of education, which I don't disagree with, and have experience, but it has to be a resident of San Juan County, is severely limiting. How many people in San Juan County would be even eligible to run for that position when it's such a limited description? And that's on page 2, commissioner qualifications. So those are my comments. I'd love to hear from Kevin that he will commit to not running for that position.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Anybody else from the public? We're going to go to Mylene.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, I've said before, I'm against having qualifications for elected office. I could nitpick the words, and definitely the words have been softened since the last writing. They've been broadened in the case of the auditor, which is pretty good. They're vague enough that I can imagine all kinds of voter challenges coming out of them. So administration is, yes, one of my concerns. But my fundamental concern is you are limiting access to office. And I still believe that the ability to run for a public office is just a fundamental right in this democracy of ours. And I really believe in elections and in the democracy and in the intelligence of the electorate to vote for the right people, at least in this county. So I'm concerned about your limiting access to office. And yes, if you do it, please take the word chief out of the auditor one, and then it'll be vague enough that pretty much everybody qualifies.
Great, thank you. Randy, are you public comment?
Yes, please.
Thank you, please go ahead.
Just a quick comment. I'm sorry I missed the chance to talk to all of you about enforcement of these rules. I did send around an email on that topic, different ways in which these rules might be able to be enforced. I am not confident at all with enforcement of general broad qualification requirements, such as years of experience in a certain job field or something like that. That is just not the kind of thing that it's too soft, too at the edges to be enforceable. And I've heard some people suggesting different ways that might happen. Qualifications that are based upon a kind of certificate like there is for the assessor is more easily done. qualifications based upon years of residing in, even years of residing in the county might even be difficult to enforce sometimes. Time being a registered voter is less difficult. So I'm just cautioning you, when you add those kind of qualifications, they may not always be enforceable.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public care to speak? Okay, so we're going to go back to the qualifications for elected officials discussion. Back to Maureen, please.
No, my question would be though, Kevin, if we vote on these and some get voted on and some don't, how do you balance the qualification list? We were looking at this as the idea of just doing minimum qualifications. And I think it'll be uneven.
Okay, and Jane Fuller is agreeing with you. So I misunderstood that from the subcommittee then. And so I was proposing a path forward earlier and looking for input. So your input is that you would rather have it be put forward as a package and one vote up or down on the full package.
I'm afraid so, yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to be difficult, but
No,
I think
no,
Dick
no.
would have offered that as well.
Okay, then no, that's fine. And I was literally just looking for input on a process for us to go forward. So so if the recommendation from the subcommittee is an up or down vote, that's fine. I would like to add mine to the list then. So I'm going to go, I see Patty's hand and I had somebody else and I've forgotten now. Oh, sorry. It's going to go Anne Marie first and then Patty, and don't yell at me if I'm out of line. And then whoever else was next. Okay. So we're going Anne Marie first.
Well, I was particularly struck by the sheriff, because of us adding additional requirements there. I think it's one thing if it's already in the RCW or, some specific experience that just makes it like you have to have that. Otherwise, I'm concerned about not really allowing and moving forward with a diversified pool of applicants. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Understood. Patty, please.
My question is, educate me again. Currently, we have no qualifications. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Except for assessor.
Except for assessor. Okay.
No, there's none for assessor.
There's none for assessor either.
May I say, Madam Chair, may I say, the only qualification that I could find that is actually listed is for the prosecuting attorney. They have to have passed the bar exam, which is not part of this.
No. So
but there
my comment is that I'm for no qualifications for office. That's just me. I'm for not putting any qualifications on there and leaving the charter as is.
Other comments?
Olivia.
Olivia, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Is this a recommendation or something specifically to add to the charter?
This is my understanding is this is a recommendation from the subcommittee to be put into the charter. So this would be a charter amendment is what the subcommittee is recommending. Am I correct on that?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And the subcommittee voted to move this forward to us.
Correct.
As was put forward. So being that it's an up or down vote, what I'd like to do is ask for the screen shared again so that Maureen, you could finish I don't think you got through all of them. We got caught up on the sheriff. So go to the last ones and then we could see where folks are. If we want to put a motion on the table or if we want to let it sit for a while.
I have to say that I know that there are questions on the sheriff out the written words here. However, the sheriff approved of it. He's the one that indicated there would be no change. Just so you know that. I mean, I guess the next one is treasurer. Yeah, and this is the change that was made. County or financial. So does anyone have any questions on that one?
On treasurer, any questions? Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I have a more general question.
Go ahead, Jay,
let's put
please.
myself back on video. Was this, I apologize, was this sent to us?
Yeah,
before
it
the
was
meeting?
sent to you originally and then it went back to us for changes.
Right. My question is, were these changes sent to us in advance of this meeting tonight?
You know what, Jane, I can't, to be perfectly honest, I don't remember because this has been held over a couple of times.
I see.
And I thought
Thank
I
you.
would send everything out. Honestly, I did. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty good about doing that, but I can't remember right now.
No, I hear you, Maureen, and thank you for that. I appreciate, and I heard you, I've heard you, yeah, talk about it being bump. It's helpful to read it now, but it would be helpful to read it and think about it prior to coming into a full commission discussion.
Of course.
And I've already expressed to our chair in chat that I think it's somewhat problematic that the person that went in and did the work on this is not present. I think it puts you in a difficult position, Maureen, and I'm concerned about spending our valuable commission time on something that can't be presented by the person who actually, went back into the weeds. And so I've already shared that with Kevin. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you very much.
I appreciate that, Jane.
Shall we move on to findings?
Please.
Okay. And again, this is just it was on our task list and we came up with this, and it basically just says minimum qualifications for various elected offices are necessary to ensure. And I just heard Randy say that it may be difficult to enforce. I think that was his word. But we present this and that's what it is. So,
Could I
Kevin?
comment?
Oh yeah, please, David, go ahead.
Yeah. Don't forget that if these were appointed positions, the county council would be looking at candidates and vetting them or choosing the final selection based on their qualifications. So we're just adding qualifications that would be in place if they were appointed. We're now just adding them to elected. In fact, if they were being interviewed, there'd be much more vetting of their qualifications than this. This is very much of a minimum.
Yeah.
And I think in response to somebody else who said that they want to open it up to everybody. Everybody would include 18-year-olds who have resided in this county. Maybe there's 3 years. No, we've added 3 years of residency. That would mean somebody would have to be 21, among other things. But if they were, if we didn't have qualifications, somebody 18 years old could run for these offices, possibly be unopposed. And if they were opposed, that would come out in the election and the debate over the candidates that, no, this person doesn't have an experience, and they probably wouldn't win. But what if somebody is the only candidate and they're 18 years old?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to run that risk? I certainly don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this it for the findings?
That's it.
Can we stop screen share, please? Dave, thank you for that. I want to echo Jane's comments. Maureen, thank you so much for stepping up and walking us through this. Really appreciate that. So I have Janet and then Bob and then Olivia.
I lowered my hand, but I'll just go ahead and say, David, to the point you just brought up, I mean, if I were running for sheriff and I was unopposed, I'm pretty sure I'd be vetted by the voters of San Juan County and not be elected. I think there is a vetting process that goes through by the voters. So not that minimum qualifications isn't a bad idea, but I do think that people do vet as voters who they're voting for.
Not if they're the only candidate.
David, you're not called upon. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just backing down. I'm over it.
Oh,
Yes,
I knew you'd do
Bob and then Olivia.
All right, Kevin, do we have a motion yet on the floor?
No, we do not.
I move that we adopt all of the items that have been presented to us and the findings, with the exception of the portion of the sheriff's qualifications that deal with the part that's not a qualification, the training that takes place after he's elected. That's my
So
motion.
Bob,
I'll
if you
live
will,
with that.
okay, go ahead.
But so your motion, just to clarify, let's see if we have a second. Do we have a second?
David.
Dale, seconds. Okay. So your motion to clarify is that you're moving that we adopt the slate as proposed by the subcommittee with the amendment that was made in discussion today to remove the RCW reference from the sheriff's piece.
Yes, yes.
That's correct.
Okay, so we are now under discussion, and I have Olivia and then myself and then David again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate that there are no qualifications. I love that because it gives a lot of opportunity for people to step up and step in. I know that there's been a lot of comment about age, and I am the youngest person on this commission. I would love to see more young people get involved. I would love to see that, you know? And if someone who was robust and intelligent and awesome wanted to step in when they were 18, I hope that they get on the ballot. And I think that radical change is coming. Obviously, this group is a part of a lot of radical change, and we have to think about ageism when it comes to people who are older and also younger. It doesn't mean that people, if they're younger or older, are incapable. So I really hope that our group thinks about that specifically to what's being presented or what's being talked about. So I appreciate the work that the subcommittee did. And I also too wish that Dick would have been here. Man, ferries, we all understand, you know, getting caught off island or caught on the ferry or not being able to make it to a meeting because of that. So I am not going to vote to approve any of these. I think that it should stay as is.
Okay, I have myself and then David. What I want to say is, while some qualifications I think can make sense for a couple reasons, I also will be voting no. And one is exactly what Olivia just said. There's some young people in this community. There's a young woman I met the other day who I hope runs for the climate position. There's a young gentleman I hope runs for county council. But as I've said before, I have two firsthand experiences that have really impacted me with regard to qualifications. One was brought up earlier. I had an incredible working relationship with our past sheriff, who was the second longest serving sheriff in state history, was recognized through formal Senate resolution, and not just because I was there, but because a whole bunch of other senators signed on and supported when he retired. And he was a probation officer. He would not qualify under these qualifications. And I have a difference of opinion with some of you regarding when he was sheriff. I think he was one of the better sheriffs we've ever had. And that is not a jab at our current sheriff. I think he's doing a fantastic job. But Bill Cummins was incredible. And something I said on the Senate floor, which I said to this commission before, I will say again, which is he knew when to give a kid a break and he knew when to throw a book at him. And that had nothing to do with him being a law enforcement officer for 2 or 3 years before he was sheriff. My other experience is someone I worked with in the Senate who was exceptionally well qualified at her job. And she was a hairdresser before she was in the Senate. And so the skills that we have as individuals transfer in unique and unusual ways. And I think it's really important to consider that when we consider this motion before us. David.
I do not want an 18-year-old to be an auditor, assessor, treasurer, county clerk, or sheriff. They may be great at the age of 18, but they're nowhere near as qualified as somebody 30, 40, 50 years old who has the qualifications that we've spelled out. I would be, and I know you're going to say that, oh, what there's going to be the voters, they're going to decide. What if there isn't another candidate? So that person wins automatically. The voters don't have a choice in that case. They get one vote, they win.
You know what? If no one steps up, when that person.
Hang on, sorry. I'm going to call on you. but we're gonna go
Okay.
to Kyle and then, sorry,
No,
David.
but I want to suggest a friendly amendment because of something Mylene said about she doesn't have a chief deputy, or she has something like it. She put in the chat something to that effect.
He wants
So
chief.
maybe she just wants it to be a deputy. So I'd like to know what she suggested, and I'd like to put that in as a friendly amendment for the qualifications for the auditor's office.
Hers was remove the word chief.
Okay,
Thank you.
I propose that as a friendly amendment.
Do the maker and the second of the original motion support that?
I don't like it, but I accept it.
Who seconded?
I think I second.
Oh, so I guess you're seconding. Okay, fine. We're just, it's all right. I don't know if we need to see it. I think we got it. The word chief was in auditor, and she said she doesn't have a chief deputy. Okay, Kyle and then Janet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I call the question.
Does everybody support calling the question at this point?
Yes.
I had my hand up to make a very brief comment
And so did Janet.
before that.
But the question's been called, so if
Oh,
everybody's
okay.
calling the question, we can
Yeah.
go ahead with
That's
the
good.
question.
Yeah.
Everybody support it?
Yes.
Or with the question. So the question is on the table. Tony, what? Because I didn't take a vote on it, I'm doing it by consensus
No,
casually.
you're asking if we support it. I said no.
Oh, okay. You don't support calling the question?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So,
There are two questions there are two persons I want to hear from. I want to hear from Janet and I want to hear from Bob.
Tony, am I correct that calling the question, you need a unanimous or it just needs to be voted upon?
It has to be voted upon majority by 67%.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so now, okay, for calling the question, everybody in favor of calling the question, please raise your hand. You got four. Okay, we're not calling the question. We're going to continue with discussion. So we have Kyle and then Janet. And then Bob.
Nothing further from me, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And then Janet.
All I was going to say is, David, if there's an 18-year-old kid who's running for auditor and no middle-aged person wants to run against that person, I am voting for that 18-year-old person who at least wants the job. So that's my comment to that. Sorry.
I love that. Okay, Bob.
The previous sheriff that you admired so much would have qualified under these new qualifications because he was a law enforcement officer when he served as a state probation officer. I served in that system for a number of years, and those are law enforcement officers.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, he would have
I think
qualified.
so maybe my example is poor, but my point is still the same. I'm going to go with Tony and then Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we have a very smart electorate and we have very good participation in the electoral process. I think, and I've Janet mentioned, if I've known a bunch of teenagers as a school board director that I would love to have them run for office, and I don't want to put anything in their way for running for office if they want to, because some of these young persons are very smart and very sharp. It's up to the electorate to decide if that person is qualified or not. And I've said that in our subcommittee at the time. So just to respond to the age issue, I'm not really concerned about the young people running for office, and I would be voting for young people if they are qualified to do the job. Thank you.
Okay, Paul.
The assessor, auditor, and treasurer are the financial backbone of the county. I just looked up what the taxes are coming in just this year. Over $63 million in property taxes are going to be flowing through those three offices. And you have nobody that has any of the qualifications. That's asking for havoc. It's important that they have basic qualifications. Now that's what we're all trying to do here.
Okay, David, you've already spoken. So under our rules, you've already spoken under this motion. So now that we're under a motion, we're under those rules. So I will not be calling on you again. So Patty.
I just want to say that I've worked in financial stuff all of my career. I never took an accounting class. I probably wouldn't have been hired to do something, except I worked sort of here, and then they needed something there, and then they needed something there. And pretty soon I was in charge of $1 million budget. It doesn't necessarily mean you can't do it if you haven't got the CPA behind you, you know, or even the 3 years of experience in some office that has all of that. You can do it if you can do it. And if you're running for an office, generally, you know, if somebody was running for treasurer, I would hope that there would be more than one person if that person was not qualified to handle money. But speaking from somebody who has handled money and $1 million budgets, you know, you don't really need those qualifications. I probably wouldn't have been hired.
Any further comments? Olivia, have you spoken under the motion? Once? And David wants to speak again as well. We've got a couple minutes. If folks don't mind, I will go ahead and lax the rules and just let the folks who want to comment so that because I think this is very important and it looks like it's going to be a mixed vote. Is that okay with folks? Okay, so we're going to go to David and then Olivia.
These examples of hairdressers and everything are great examples of when it worked, but all you have to do is look at the national political landscape and you see thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of cases where it didn't work. So let's not get carried away. And let's not get carried away about a student that you know. I have 2 daughters that are the overly accomplished in their fields. I would not vote for them to become in this position. That they don't, their age, they're in their 40s. I would not vote for them. They don't have the qualification. So again, though, this thing about the voters will choose. The voters have made stupid decisions as well as smart decisions here and nationwide. And so I don't buy this thing that voters don't make dumb decisions. They do. But I have to emphasize over and over again, if you have one candidate, you could very well be stuck with somebody who's unqualified. And if we throw this thing all out, we've thrown out the 2 that I think are the most important are the sheriff having some experience in law enforcement, and number 2, the assessor having experience dealing with assessing and how that whole process works. Do you want John Culsis to be replaced by some 18-year-old who has no experience whatsoever? No. He's just been a full student? No, I don't. I don't want to run that risk.
Thank you. Olivia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually don't think that I had commented once the motion was started. I was thinking back. I don't think so. I don't think it's inappropriate for me to speak at this point, but correct me if I'm wrong. So I run a bank. I manage a bank. I manage over $100 million, if not more, on a regular basis. And I have dropped out of college twice. And I have come up in the ranks. I've worked for my position. I have a ton of experience, but I don't have that, you know, boom, seal of approval on my education. And so I hope that there is someone in the future who has that experience to fill those shoes. And I totally understand Paul's position. I think that it's a huge responsibility for our county's budget. It's an absolutely huge responsibility. But there is that possibility to make it so someone can do it. And I feel really strongly about this, obviously. So the point that I'm trying to make is that if we take away the opportunity for people to do things differently when it comes to this, it could really squash a lot of opportunity for people. And I had another point and I can't remember. I apologize. And I guess it's not necessary for me to share because I can't remember. So thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Jane? Jane?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, no, I just support what Olivia is saying, and I think we need to wrap this up. That's it.
I'm wondering if I was going to say how many people can call the question. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, the motion before us is to accept the recommendations from the subcommittee as presented, less the RCW reference under the sheriff. and there was a friendly amendment that was accepted on something else too, on Mylene's language. to
Remove clerk,
remove
chief.
chief
doesn't matter.
from deputy. So that is the motion before us. We have a second. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, can you keep your hands up for 1 second? Okay, I'm gonna write them down. I have Maureen, and I have Paul, and I have Bob, and I have David, and I have Tony. Am I missing anybody?
That's our committee.
That's our committee.
Yeah, it's a committee.
So, okay, I don't think I see any others at this point in time. So all those opposed, please raise your hands. Okay, I have Patty, and I have Olivia, and I have Kyle, and I have Dave. I have Anne Marie. We can see where this is going. I'm still going to list them out for the record. Sharon, and Jane, and Janet. So I have Patty, Olivia, Kyle, Dave, Anne Marie, Sharon, Jane, and Janet. Am I missing anybody? Any abstentions? The motion fails. Okay,
Mr. Chair, are you required to vote?
I am not, but I actually recorded I will record myself as a no, and I said that previously, but yes, so sorry, the chair votes no.
Okay, so I just want to get this down. There were 5 in favor, 9 opposed, no abstentions. Is that true?
You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in opposed and 5 in favor. So the motion fails.
No abstention. Okay.
Well, there must have been some abstentions.
No, there were
That's only 14.
people.
We only have 14 people present? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I do not have anything at this time under new business. Does anybody else have any new business? Okay, yeah, somebody? Who was that? Paul?
So Kevin, where do we stand then? If this has not been accepted by the CRC, then that means all the work of that subcommittee is not accepted. Is that correct?
On that issue, yes, it has not been accepted. Now, under the rule that we passed earlier, if 5 people, and there are 5 of you, vote to revisit, you could speak to some other members and revisit it and put that back on the agenda. I would ask that if you're inclined to do so, that you speak to some other members and see if there's support. I will say that for myself, it's difficult because some of them I actually appreciated some of the recommendations, but when they were put forward as a full slate, I can't support the full slate. And so the way the question was put forward, I think also, at least I will speak for myself, made it more difficult. I'll keep it at that. But at this point, to answer your question, Commissioner Dossett, the motion has failed, so it is not an amendment to be put forward to the public at this point in time. Yeah, please go ahead.
So if we presented these as separate motions, one for each assessor, auditor, treasurer, each of those are separate, and we voted on them separately, would that made a difference?
I was saying for myself, it may have, but that is not the way it was put forward. And we don't know, we can't read everybody else's brain, and there's members not here. So what I was being serious in what I was saying, which was, and Maureen, your hand, I'll call you in just a sec. What I was saying is, if the 5 of you who are supportive, because I know you put a lot of work into this, had conversations with other members and found out if there was actually more support, or if it were posed differently, that maybe some subset of it could come forward, then, contact me and let me know that. But I would not want to, just because we are pressed for time, I would not want to spend a lot more time discussing that, have it brought back to the agenda and have the same result.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah. But I do really appreciate the subcommittee's work, and I think it's been a positive discussion this evening. Maureen.
Oh, please. I don't even think I can ask you anything right now. My point was going to be, it would be very difficult to have a sheriff requirement and not have it for the auditor. I mean, that becomes just impossible. I mean, it's just impossible. So this has been too long. And we're talking about managing time, and we've got a lot to do, and we are spending a lot of time, a lot of multiple questions on some things. I ask the chair to please consider that.
I agree. I don't disagree. And I also thought when you made that point earlier, it was very important, which is it would be very difficult for the county to regulate one person having qualifications and another person not.
Yeah,
Hang on, although there are minimum qualifications right now for the assessor. So I saw Kyle's hand and then Anne Marie's hand, and I will point out that we're 3 minutes over on time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With no further new business and with thanks to the staff and the attending public, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Tony? Tony seconded. Anne Marie, did you have something yet?
Yeah, I wanted to say that we need to make sure the public knows that there are recordings of these meetings,
Yeah.
both all of the subcommittee meetings and all of the full committee meetings. So some of the questions that were asked today are available on the recordings. I know that people don't have a lot of time to listen to those, but that's those are really the minutes of the meeting as far as I can tell. Thank you.
Yeah, and so the motion is, and we have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. And so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, just on that point, we actually, oh, sorry.
Are there any opposed to us adjourning the meeting?
Oh.
Okay, so the meeting is adjourned. We can stop recording. Jane, please.
Just on